like I kept hearing like, Mom, I know you and Dad weren't great, but why? Why did it happen? And it just felt like there was nothing that I said that worked until I just said, we just weren't a vibrational match anymore. And I just saw this look on their face and it was like, oh, mhm, okay. And never asked again. Um, yeah, I think, just I think telling kids the truth of what they need to hear at their age level. I've had a friend who's a therapist, and she always talks about naming what is, like, and just being honest and not gaslighting a kid and saying like, yeah, this sucks, or this is difficult, or I'm having a hard time. Like, just really, I think sometimes we want to protect our kids from everything, and it's just not always possible. And I think, showing up and just being honest about like, I'm having a hard time. I need to go be by myself. Like, and saying like, this is not your fault. I'm having a hard time. And it's like, I think that's another big thing to say, like, this is not your fault. This is not
Yeah,
your fault.
yeah. Welcome to Single Parent Success Stories, a podcast designed to inspire single parents. Here you'll find resources from self-care to finances to parenting and everything in between. Discover what it takes to thrive. Let the stories inspire you to what is possible. Before we start the next conversation, I want to invite you to check out my amazing book, The Gift Inside, a powerful guide for healing your body, mind, and soul. Reclaim your strengths and awaken your true potential. Whether you are navigating heartbreak or simply seeking deeper fulfillment, this book offers the tools to turn your struggles into triumphs. It is time to unlock the gift within you. Available now on Amazon, or you can check it out on my website www.irinashehovtsov.com. Hello and welcome to Single Parent Success Stories. Today we have a special guest, Kristy Iris. She's a creative alchemist who weaves imagination, healing, and transformation into everything she touches. With a natural gift for shifting energy in homes and lives, Kristy helps others create spaces that are not only functional, but deeply aligned and supportive. Through her unique system, Fizome, Kristy offers a deeply personal, intuitive approach that fosters creativity, healing, and alignment, helping others thrive in their environments and embrace their own magic. Welcome, Kristy. It is a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming. So please share with us, who is Kristy in your own words?
Well, in the scope of this being a single parenting podcast, I am a single parent to a tween. I've been single for 2.5 years, although my ex, we were together for 17 years, and we never married, so that I have not been through a divorce legal stuff. We've worked it out amongst ourselves, which has been a real blessing. And my kiddo is with me most of the time. As I shared before, I asked about what I was allowed to share about them, and pretty much nothing. This is my story. We have strong boundaries. My ex traveled usually about 200 days a year. So I was mostly a solo single parent, even when we were together. I, as you mentioned, I have created a process called Fizome, which I have been through this process of becoming a single parent and splitting up. I was really my own best success story. I created this process, Fizome. It grew out of my background. My first career was in theater design, costumes, sets, and lighting. And eventually I also did special events. As I like to say, make-believe worlds for make-believe people. And I've done it since I was in second grade. I ended up getting into a combined bachelor's, master's program in a very prestigious program. So I moved to New York City to study, and I also ended up designing off-Broadway and off-Broadway, and even working on some Broadway shows. And I had an amazing education. I started out with costumes, and I'm not a fashionista. I loved understanding who people were, these make-believe characters, and this journey in a story that they went on. And I love the collaborative process that the director, sometimes if the playwright's still alive, and the designers get together and we create this world, and we get to understand who these characters are in the world and how we're going to tell the story. And eventually I found that I wanted to do that with real people and help real people. I actually had a brief marriage in my 20s. I call it my dress rehearsal. We were married, and this all started because I just felt so unloved and uncherished. And I started putting pictures up in my home of men adoring women, of women being adored, like the Klimt, the kiss, like I was rocking the cliches all over the place. And I kept seeing these pictures over and over and over. And what it did was, it didn't change him. It changed me. I came to realize that he was never going to be able to probably love and adore me the way I wanted to. And I also realized that I was probably not able to receive what I even wanted. And I started playing around. I discovered feng shui. At the time, I didn't even know how to pronounce it. I thought it was feng shui. And then I discovered that most indigenous cultures had a way of living in harmony with their environments, and most religions did. And I just started approaching it like I would a play, and taking apart, like understanding the roots of it and how am I going to adapt this for myself? Because at the time, what was kind of out there was like, oh, you have a wealth corner, put a three-legged frog there. And that just didn't resonate for me. I was like, well, I'm the character. What does the three-legged frog mean to me? What does a wealth corner mean to me? And at that point, friends would come over, who had been coming over to my home, and they would all stop in the same place and go, Kristy, did you get new furniture? I'm like, no. And they're like, it was like a script almost. I'm like, what did you do? Your house feels so different. It feels so good. And I'm like, oh, I'm playing around with this stuff and like feng shui, and I'm just doing it my own way. And every one of them said, well, I don't just like, come over, like, I don't care what you're doing. Just come make my house feel that good. And that just, like, something happened in my heart. There was such a shift that there was this opportunity to help people, to be like one-to-one direct. I can do that. I can come help you. And that was where Fizome was born. It was like, and I realized as I went on, I first called it modern feng shui, but I felt so inauthentic to what I was doing, because people were like, oh, so you do feng shui? I'm like, well, not really. It's kind of like my own twist on it. And then I went about, I had this huge spiritual awakening. The divorce, we got divorced shortly after that. It was an easy divorce. I mean, I had a horrible marriage. I had an easy divorce. We had a house. I sold the house, everything. I mean, the whole thing was done in 6 weeks, and we never even had to go to court.
Nice.
Right. Now, we didn't have kids, but it was all done. And that was the beginning of it, of me then, like, just in this quest to figure out, how could I make my home work for me? How could I help other people? And I didn't even know I had a business. I mean, I went to art school. Like, honestly, I would cross the street to not walk in front of the business school, because those guys in ties kind of scared me. I was much more comfortable with, like, the motorcycle jackets and purple hair and the artsy types.
Yes.
So it just evolved, and then it just, like, grew, and eventually, I discovered I had a business, and I wanted it to work. And through that, over the years, I had clients. Oh, and I started this in the 1900s, like 1990. 1999 was like when I think of the official start of Fizome. And the word Fizome came from the results was a lot of times people would say, Kristy, I feel like this energy, I have so much more energy, but yet I have this like sense of inner peace. So there's like the fizz, and then the om is also our home. I often like to say fizz or biz also. So I ended up, I work with a lot of people who work from home because it's very complicated to work in your home and live in your home because it's a totally different mindset. And I have over the years also come to work with a lot of people who are, as I call it, not like we call it neurospicy, like on the spectrum of having a brain that is not wired for like a lot of simple things to be easy, like decluttering.
Yeah.
And through this process, I was figuring out, oh, here's all the ways I'm getting distracted while I'm decluttering, or I'm trying to pack to move, or I'm just trying to clean up. And I started taking apart all the ways I was getting distracted and created a process specifically for our brains. And then I realized other people needed that too. And that became part of Fizome as well. And through the years, I worked with a lot of clients who were divorced, splitting up, wanting to split up, like help me set up my home to help me leave my husband. I mean, I was kind of surprised a few times that worked. One time, actually, it worked in the opposite, and they ended up falling back in love and staying together. So our homes have a profound impact on our quality of life, on how we live, from big things to, to just these little tiny annoyances, and the things that speak to us. I look at our home on so many levels. There's the level of how we grew up experiencing home and how that plays in to how we create home now, of it being a creative space for us to explore, a creative medium, a tool for transformation and manifestation. And everything that we see is speaking to our minds. Like, we think we don't notice something after a while, but actually it goes from being a conscious thought to a subconscious thought, which then those thoughts repeated over and over become neural pathways in our brains, which these neural pathways are what become our beliefs and our values and what empower the actions that we take. So when we program our homes to speak, to tell us what we want to think and feel, and let go of what's not speaking, talking pretty to us, then we get to help our homes get to help us shift and live more peacefully, live the lives that we want with a lot more ease. And that's where my home has helped me. And I saw that over the years, the clients that stayed in the home that they were in before they split up, before they divorced or separated, had a much harder time moving on in their lives. And the clients that moved out of the home and like often left everything and started fresh seemed to just have a remarkably brighter outlook on life and an easier time adjusting and starting over. And the people that were often like holding on to the house and holding on and being surrounded by all of these stories, it was such a remarkable difference between those two experiences.
Yeah, yeah. Did you stay in your home or did you move out?
I stayed in my home. We split up. We split up after COVID. So he had been traveling 200 days a year and then was suddenly home for like 2 years. And that, I think what had been easier because, he'd be home for 2 weeks and then he'd leave for a week. And that made it easier to stay together longer. And then it became very apparent that we were not going to last. But this was a home that our kiddo had been in, for years at that point, was 5 minutes from school. And so when we came to like, well, who's going to stay in the house? I said, well, I'm like, I we need to stay here. Like I knew I had faith, wavering faith, but at that point it also was just I just didn't have the bandwidth to also move. Like there was just part of me that was like, oh, I just don't. But it was also just, and he never really liked the house anyway. And I felt very connected to the house and the property, you know, the trees and all the land around the house. But it just made the most sense for our kiddo. And they live with me. So we stayed, but I knew that I had to do some serious work in this home. The first part was just packing up 80% of the stuff that he left and piling it in the garage for him to come pick up. And that was like cleaning up and deep cleaning. And that I feel like it took like a month or two. And that was like exhausting. Oh, it was so exhausting. But then I knew we just, like, the rooms needed to be reassigned. And it's funny because at that point, my smart little kid goes, Mom, we got to take over the house. And I was like, I want dad's office for my bedroom. And I actually thought it would become my home office, my office studio. But I'm like, and it was the primary suite. You know, that's the bigger bathroom, it's the biggest room. But I'm like, all right, fine. I actually took as my bedroom is the significantly smallest bedroom. It's a 3-bedroom house. And also at that time, it was like, what, 2022? So like rent, like to move and what I would have paid to rent someplace, a 1-bedroom would have cost probably more than what my 3-bedroom house cost. It was just, if I could find something, it was just crazy. Also, I live in Sarasota, Florida. So we live, you know, there's like 2 million people have moved into the state, you know, in like the 2 years. At that time, people were just flooding here, and the property values were just through the roof. As it is, my rent went up to like 32%. It was just, I know.
Since then, or still at those levels?
It's still at the same place. Yeah. Yeah, the prices are still, you know, not what we were used to in Florida. Like everywhere, you know, I'm not, you know, it's not like I'm, you know, different. So, I knew we had it on us, but fortunately, I had a kid that was totally invested in that and changing everything. And it was like, Mom, we've got to change everything. I was like, yes, we do. And so, you know, even, you know, there was a moment where we just even needed to change our perspective. Like the way the living room was set up it was fine. It worked just fine. And we have kind of like an open concept between the living room and the dining room. And one night I was like, let's just change it. Like, what do you think about moving it? And like switching the dining room and the living room area. And like, yeah. So we like started pulling like the furniture. And it's funny because you often think about doing that for 3 years and then it takes 20 minutes to do it. Well, we started doing it, and then halfway through, it was like we just got into a fight. I yelled, like I really try hard not to be a yelling parent, but we were yelling at each other. The next thing, the door slammed. I am rage vacuuming the couch. I am not a neat neck person. I'm not a naturally tidy, but I'm like, and at that point, I recognized that if I didn't know better, I would have been like, oh, this is a bad idea. Look at what this is stirred up. Look at this. Look at what this is stirring up. Forget it. We're not going to do it. This is clearly a bad idea. But I knew that we needed to go through it. I knew that we still needed to like get it done.
Mhm.
And we moved it. We totally flipped the room. And in some ways it was like, does this make more sense? First we had moved the couch and that was like okay, but this was like we're just moving the whole thing around. And this is the other thing. It's a journey. It's a process. Like sometimes you're not ready to make the big change, so we make little incremental changes.
Mhm.
And sometimes we like just literally needed a different perspective. But yeah, we just, it was like I just knew we needed to go through. And then it was like, oh, this is so good. Thank goodness we did this. We see like out the windows differently and we see everything is like a different perspective. And the room I'm in now, it was actually what we used as our primary bedroom, and it's my art studio and office space. And so that it's like every room has been rearranged. And it's funny, well, this wasn't funny. Water came in we have like a enclosed, what used to be an out, I want to say a lanai, if you know what a screened-in porch, and they
Mhm.
closed it in. And then we had like all these hurricanes this year, and we got a lot of water in it, so it was an art studio, and we had to move it. So now our Florida room, which was an art studio, is actually our dining room, which we have turned into a ping pong table on our dining room table, and we play ping pong. And what was the dining room, which was the living room, is now an art studio. So it's like this evolution. And then um last summer in 20, like, I don't know, 18 months ago almost, when this comes out, my kiddo was diagnosed with a chronic illness, an autoimmune disease that is very unpredictable and requires care at any point 24/7. I have not slept through the night since that diagnosis. I have to get up and check on things through the night. And at the same time, I have a business. And people are like, I don't know how you're doing this. Like, how do you do that? And I have to say, like, my home has supported me. When I stop and I go, well, what are the things, like what is working for me? Having a home that supports me. And then even though, yep, sometimes it gets cluttered, and life, especially the first 6 months of just learning how to keep my kid alive, I had to just let a lot of things go. But even with like the stories that I have around the clutter, is like, okay, that's the choice. Like, that's okay. Like, it doesn't define who I am, and I have a relationship with it that's different. Um, yeah, that's the water.
Sometimes we need a shift of perspective, and our homes are where we spend, I guess, and during COVID we noticed that we spend the majority of our time in this place. We used to maybe travel to work and only came home to sleep, but now that kind of dynamic has shifted. Now you spend, your home is your main base where you spend most of your time, and sometimes you're working, you're sleeping, you're entertaining. It's all happening in that same area. And
Yeah.
setting a different perspective, looking at things from a different angle, kind of opens you up for possibility, as opposed to being stuck in something that isn't working, but
Mhm.
opening new ways, or new, I don't know, kind of opening new ways of thinking and being. So
Yeah.
awesome that you do that. That's amazing. What advice would you give to your younger self?
I think definitely have more fun, like create more, and make rest, like deep rest, um, a priority, more of a priority. I think that has been another side of this is in since that diagnosis, I knew that I needed to double down on my self-care. And and I don't mean like self-care like, getting a manicure or something like that. I mean like the deep stuff of processing and healing and giving myself a chance for my nervous system to unwind. And I created what I call the island of ebb, because we have the ebb and the flow times in our life. And when the ebb happens, or making myself ebb, I got myself one of those Papazon chairs, they're like the round saucer things, and I just can sink into that and meditate, and it's just a place, it is a dedicated place for me to rest and meditate and journal. And I really try and make a point to get up a little earlier, at least a few times a week, and journal and meditate before I start the day to, boy, that makes such a difference. And that's what works for me. And I find so often with clients that, like, if you're not doing the self-care, what do you need in your home to support you to doing that?
Right. Self-care is important. If you don't have all your batteries in order, what kind of person shows up not just for yourself and for others? So totally agree with you. What kind of advice would you give to single parents who are just stepping onto the journey of single parenting?
No, I think it's the same thing of creating the space to sit and process and think and meditate and sit in a coloring book, and just, there's so many big changes that are happening. And, chances are that, you're single because something didn't work out the way that you hoped or planned or expected. And being able to have a dedicated space that even as you approach it, your whole body goes, okay, this is where and I mean, like, and I know I have space in my home, but I mean, literally, if you have to put a pillow on the floor in the back of your closet so you can hide for 3 minutes before the kids find you, then do that. It doesn't have to be like, I mean, it took me years to get a Papasan chair. I mean, like, seriously, like, or is it just something that triggers your body to, even as you see it, can start to go, okay. And you don't have to have anything elaborate. I mean, literally, you could just sit and get a coloring book, or sit with, a squishy, or, steal a handful of Play-Doh and just sit and, like, give yourself a moment to just, I think we need a place to often let our nervous systems unwind and reset.
What do you think is the most important trait to instill in a child?
Oh, well, I think that's such a great question. Like, a sense, I think that there's a sense of possibility, and I don't know, I just feel like I'm called to say this, I kept hearing, like, Mom, I know you and Dad weren't great, but why? Why did it happen? And it just felt like there was nothing that I said that worked, until I just said, we just weren't a vibrational match anymore. And I just saw this look on their face, and it was like, oh, okay. And never asked again. Yeah, I think, just, I think telling kids the truth of what they need to hear at their age level. I've had a friend who's a therapist, and she always talks about naming what is, like, and just being honest and not gaslighting a kid and saying, like, yeah, this sucks, or this is difficult, or I'm having a hard time. Like, just really, I think sometimes we want to protect our kids from everything, and it's just not always possible. And I think, showing up and just being honest about, like, I'm having a hard time. I need to go be by myself. Like, and saying, like, this is not your fault. I'm having a hard time. And it's like, I think that's another big thing to say, like, this is not your fault. This is not
Yeah.
your fault.
Yeah. No, I meant to say what kind of trait to instill in a child, like kindness or believe in self, or I don't know. What do you think is important? That kind of question.
Oh, let's see, I just want, um, I think, for me, it's also a sense of humor, like, just being able to look at the lighter side of life. Like sometimes things are just so bizarre, they're funny. It's like, how is this happening? How is this my life? I think being able to,
Right. Yeah,
laugh.
because as we get older, we become so serious and we forget to laugh at ourselves. And having a sense of humor could be your instant medicine that is free, that you don't need to call anybody, you don't need to dial a doctor. But sometimes having a lighthearted approach to life can make life easier
Yeah,
or give
yeah.
you a different perspective, like we talked about, having a different perspective on things.
And it just can shift, the mood and, like sometimes it's just, I'm just a goofball. So sometimes I'll just do something silly or find the humor in it, or draw a silly picture, on the whiteboard on the refrigerator, just to break things up, make fun of myself.
What is your superpower if you had to pick one?
Mm. Um, I I feel like superpowers, like I didn't come up with this, it just I found I I feel like people's homes talk to me. Like I can pick up on, like, so tell me about that thing over there. And I love that I can pick that up through video. So I have clients all over the world. And that's the one thing, like, oh my God, my ex-mother-in-law gave me that. And there's a whole story and there's a whole thing. And there's such an opportunity for healing and transformation and, maybe keeping it and giving it a new meaning that suddenly is uplifting and empowering, or getting permission to just like freaking let it go. And maybe perhaps sometimes I think there is some real benefit to smashing things safely.
Thank you. Thank you. Any fun projects you're working on that you like to share?
Yeah, I just have a new class that I just put together online. It's on, demand. Neurospicy decluttering. So it's a talk I did, and there's a cheat sheet and work with me audio for people who are, not the neurotypical. If you have struggled with decluttering, I find that most of the experts do have no clue how our brains are wired, and we just need a whole different approach to our homes and decluttering. So that's brand new. I'm really excited about that.
Awesome. Awesome. Is there anything I haven't asked that you would like to share?
Oh my goodness. No, I don't think so. I mean, I think one thing I just want to say is just like try things. Like, and it often feels uncomfortable. Like moving the couch and the dining room, it felt weird. It felt awkward and if you just need to sometimes like just let it sit and wait a couple weeks, like just sit with it, because sometimes what is comfortable feels uncomfortable at first.
Thank you so much for coming on. If people would like to find you, learn more about you, where would they go?
No, I am Kristy with a K and Iris. So Kristy Iris, .com, or I am on most social media platforms like, YouTube and TikTok and Facebook. So you can find me wherever you hang out. Chances are I'm hanging out there too. And I do have a free Facebook group as well called Haven of My Enlightenment. I'd love for you to join.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you.